What is deja vu? You had brought that up.
You can have a dream that only lasts 2 minutes. These autistic individuals claim to time travel. It's because of individuals like that.
Have you seen this actually happen personally and throughout your studies?
In altered states of consciousness, we experience time differently. In the dreaming state, you can have a dream that only lasts 2 minutes, but it covers stuff that you couldn't do in 2 minutes. It could cover, would take, hours for that whole thing to, but it's condensed down into 2 minutes. Another example is when we've got a huge adrenaline surge because of some emergency that's come up. Time dilates, and we can do in 20 seconds what would normally take us 10, 15 times that amount of time to do, okay? And so our perception of time unfolding the way that we, that it's how we experience it, our perception of time is really, a product of brain functioning. And, we know from Einstein that, it's an illusion. That it's not that it just only goes in one direction. And in fact, there are physicists who say who talk about something called the block universe, which is really that the past, present, and future all coexist. So it's though that like the movie's already in the can, and then we're just, only seeing it frame by frame. And this is something that philosophers and physicists debate is, not only, okay, is there this evidence that, that past, present, and future all coexist? How dynamic is it? Because there are physicists who will say that just because they all coexist doesn't mean that the future is predetermined. And there are even people who say that the past isn't predetermined. It's not already determined either. So there's all of these things that come out of these models within quantum physics that are, they're really hard to, for your average person to wrap their head around. But it's because of these phenomena where you have people who claim to time travel, which these autistic individuals claim to time travel. It's because of individuals like that we see that there might actually be, some human experiences that validate some of these things that, came up from theories that are over 100 years old about the nature of reality.
How do they experience time travel?
Oh, they a lot of these individuals are very precognitive. They'll have experiences of something that hasn't happened yet. And like one of the best examples is this young woman named Elsa, who was in the Telepathy tapes, and she had this vision that her father slipped on ice and broke his hip and ended up in the hospital. Well, at the time they were living in Arizona, and that didn't look like that was a very likely possibility. But then what happened is, within 3 to 4 weeks, he was on a business trip and he slipped on ice and broke his hip and ended up in the hospital.
Wow.
So she had that experience before it already happened. And something that Phyllis Atwater, who I mentioned earlier, who's the expert on near-death experiences, but one of the things that she's written about is something called future memory. And future memory is she's had experiences of this herself, and people can have these experiences on nitrous oxide. Laughing gas can sometimes bring about this, where you literally go to some point in the future, experience something, and then come back into, this time period. And, and you're only gone for, seconds, at most, in terms of, and so you're aware of the fact that something's happened, because she describes it as there's like this, like scintillating, lights, there's like all these visual things she sees first before things shift, and then she finds herself somewhere in the future in her life, and then that closes up, and then she's back in this time period. When that future event comes around, it's not just deja vu. It's not just that individual going, oh, this seems familiar. It's literally, oh, I'm here now. Okay. And you know exactly what people are going to say, who's going to walk through the door, everything. And so it's like you saw a preview of that section of the movie reel in advance, and now you're there. And it's something that she has many, many, many examples of this. And so that's I'd say the predominant type of time travel that these kids do is really more into the future rather than into the past.
Have you seen this actually happen personally and throughout your studies? Have you seen any incidents?
Well, I've just heard anecdotes, but one of the things that I want to do is I want to test them for precognition. I've seen people email me with a prediction and then email me later with, okay, that prediction. See, I told you, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. One of the problems about precognitions, though, is that usually for people who do this kind of time travel, time is a strange concept to them. And precognition doesn't really give you, it's not like there's a calendar date that comes along with it so that you know exactly when it's going to happen. So you don't, so when Elsa had that, vision of her father, she didn't know if it was going to happen, in 2 weeks and 2 years. You just don't know. And so it'd be nice if there was a timestamp on it, but generally there isn't.
The reason I'm asking is I'm just curious, what state do they appear to be in while this is happening? And is it a blank stare? They're not there right now. It happens to me a lot. I don't know if it's from traumatic TBIs and PTS. There's a lot of times where I'll just be sitting there and I'm not there. And I'm not saying I can do this, and I'm not trying to relate, but I'm just, I know that there are times where I'm out. And my wife and kids are like, what the hell's wrong with Dad?
Right. Yeah, it's basically a checking out. Yeah. No, I've seen them do that. Generally when I'm around, though, they're very attentive, because I'm there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely they check out.
That's what it's like. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like they're not there.
Yeah, it's like, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it's like, their conscious awareness. See, that's what we're noticing. When somebody is checked out, you realize that their awareness is not on some sensory input that's here. The awareness has gone somewhere in the mental space, the mental imagination, or, but it's gone into something that is not the here and now. And so much of this is about, where do you put your awareness? Are you so captivated by what is being presented to you by your sensory system that you're just drawn in? Or I'm so captivated by what you're having to say that I'm just giving you my every ounce of attention? Or do you have a certain percentage of attention that when you're doing something is like thinking, okay, now what is it I'm supposed to do right after and so a lot of people are walking around with divided attention. And then just think of it as what percentage of your attention is in the here and now, what's right here that I'm attending to versus this other thing. And it's the whole scale from, 0 to 100%.
Wow. What is deja vu? You had brought that up.
It's this feeling that that you've already seen something. Vu is from vision in French. Déjà already. So it's like I already saw this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I've been here before, or oh, I met you before, and in fact, I met you here before. Oh, this feels so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And
we all experience that.
We all experience it to some degree. And it's something that people who have temporal lobe epilepsy, which the temporal lobes are the section of the brain that's like on the sides here, right along here. Okay. It's interesting that it's called temporal lobe, because tempus is time. And the temporal lobe, if you have seizure activity in it, you can have people that go on fugue states. So a fugue state is where you have somebody who they're not there. They're checked out, and yet they can engage in almost like sleepwalking. They can engage in all kinds of complex activities. They can buy it. They can even go to the airport, buy a ticket, get on a plane, fly somewhere, book a hotel, and be staying there, and then 3 days later go, how did I get here? Have no recall of any of that. So that's called a fugue state, and people with temporal lobe epilepsy can have that. Well, people who have, a little bit of temporal lobe issues can also have a lot of deja vu experiences. So there's something about, the temporal lobe that if you have abnormal or excessive activity in it, that it really kind of takes you out of the here and now, kind of puts you into some, just non-local consciousness.
Interesting. No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.